Hi, I'd like to share with you today a footnote from Kant's Religion Within the Limits of Reason Alone. This is a footnote to the paragraph at the end of the introductory section of Book 2 of that work, Book 2 titled Concerning the Conflict of the Good with the Evil Principle for Sovereignty over Man. In this section, Kant is talking about the devil, about Satan, about the tempter, as a figure in Christian theology, the one who tempts human beings towards evil actions, towards acting on evil maxims that cannot be universalized. He's going to give it a particular spin and reinterpretation to make it compatible with his new rationalized version of Christianity. What I'd like to do now is to share with you the paragraph and then the footnote attached to it, and then I'll talk a little bit about what I think it means. So here's what Kant writes. So it is not surprising that an apostle represents this invisible enemy who is known only through his operations upon us and who destroys basic principles as being outside us and indeed as an evil spirit. Quote, "We wrestle not against flesh and blood, the natural inclinations, but against principalities and powers, against evil spirits." This is an expression which seems to have been used not to extend our knowledge beyond the world of sense, but only to make clear for practical use the conception of what is for us unfathomable. As far as its practical value to us is concerned, moreover, it is all one whether we place the seducer merely within ourselves or without, for guilt touches us not a whit less in the latter case than in the former, inasmuch as we would not be led astray by him at all were we not already in secret league with him. And the footnote. It is a peculiarity of Christian ethics to represent moral goodness as differing from moral evil, not as heaven from earth, but as heaven from hell. Though this representation is figurative and, as such, disturbing, it is nonetheless philosophically correct in meaning. That is, it serves to prevent us from regarding good and evil, the realm of light and the realm of darkness, as bordering on each other and as losing themselves in one another by gradual steps of greater or lesser brightness, but rather to represent those realms as being separated from one another by an immeasurable gulf. The complete dissimilarity of the basic principles by which one can become a subject of this realm or that, and the danger, too, which attends the notion of a close relationship between the characteristics which fit an individual for one or for the other, justify this manner of representation, which, though containing an element of horror, is nonetheless very exalting. So that's what Kant writes. Let's talk about what he means now. So he begins this paragraph talking first about the fact that in Christian scripture, the devil is represented as being an invisible enemy, an evil spirit, some malevolent force or personality outside of the human heart. And he quotes the passage about wrestling not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers. He says, though, Kant says, this is not intended to give us information about the real existence of some spiritual being, some non-sensible being outside the physical realm. That's not what it's all about. What it's all about, he says, is practical use. It's intended to help us practice good ethics. It's intended to help us obey the categorical imperative, ultimately. As far as its practical use is, it doesn't really matter, he says, whether the devil is thought of as being outside of us, as being some independent spirit or personality who acts against us with his malevolent will, or whether the source of evil is seen as being inside of us entirely, because even if the devil is external, he could only have effect upon us if we were already on his side, so to speak, secretly in league with him or sympathetic to his temptations. So, then he gets to the footnote, where he says, peculiarity of Christian ethics represents moral evil and moral goodness as the opposition of heaven and hell rather than of heaven and earth. That is, the realm of evil is not just the earthly realm, it is the realm of hell, entirely opposite to the heavenly realm. This is figurative, but he says philosophically correct. Here's something interesting to see Kant saying. There's some philosophical truth contained in this. And it's contained in a couple of principles Kant sees present in this image. One is the total opposition of evil and good. This prevents us from supposing that all of morality is made up of these shades of gray, where we just sort of gradually shade into less and less good and more evil. Instead, we recall anything of Kantian ethics, we know Kant is very much a bright line sort of figure. There is moral goodness, which means following the maxims that are universalizable, following the categorical imperative, and then there is neglecting one's duty and failing to act morally. And this image of hell opposed to heaven gives us a kind of forceful mythological representation, Kant might say, of the difference between absolute moral good and absolute moral evil. The other benefit of it, he says, is that it helps us to remember not just the immeasurable gulf between the life of good and the life of evil, but also the dissimilarity of their basic principles, the fact that one type of maxim, one type of rule will lead us to good, and a totally different set of principles will lead us astray, and also the danger that faces us. We are in danger in behaving evil, in behaving according to evil maxims. We are in danger of entering that realm of hell, of becoming more and more similar to those personalities destined for that fate. So he says, although it has this element of horror, it has this kind of boo quality, right? This is horrifying. That's this place of flames and torture that is hell. It also, he says, is quite exalting because it brings us back to this moral principle, which he thinks is fundamental, the categorical imperative, and the need for us to choose these universalizable maxims. So that's my quick look at and interpretation of this footnote from page 53 of Religion Within the Limits of Reason Alone. I hope you found it valuable. Thanks for watching today. Goodbye.